Today on Locked On Red Wings, is Steve Yzerman done in free agency, or is there more yet to come?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a former broadcast producer for 97.1 The Ticket, where Scotty is the host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Also want to thank you guys for making Locked On Red Wings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's going to be a pretty straightforward episode for you guys. I mean, the question is in the title, right? Is Steve Yzerman done in free agency? Is this, barring the RFAs that need to be signed, is this the roster we're going to be walking into free agency or walking into the season with or not? We'll talk about a couple of reasons why we think that that's probably not the case, as well as one reason why I overall think it's not the case, and we'll explain why. But there's one thing I would consider, especially considering the defense, that maybe that is the defense we're working with, and I'm praying it's not, but I could see it. So we'll talk all about that. But first, I want to ask you, Scotty, Steve Yzerman has yet to do a free agent availability. Normally, when he's done making his main moves, he does an availability and talks to the media to basically recap the signings he did make and the ones that he couldn't get done. Well, not only have we not gotten that yet, we have yet to get an announcement of that. And yes, we have had the media availability for the players that have signed, including Pavel Datsyuk, who was at development camp. That was really cool to see, and we'll chat a little bit briefly about that in segment 3. But mainly, I just want to ask, for you, Scotty, does the idea that Steve Yzerman has not spoken yet or has not announced a time to speak give you hope that this offseason has still moves left to be done?
It's very tinfoil hatty, very, and I respect it, and I love it. I think that there's more moves to be done because I don't know, refuse to believe that this is the offseason more so than looking at, when he's scheduled to speak or he's not scheduled to speak right now. More than anything like that, I just think, I don't know, maybe that's me coping. Maybe that's just me being I don't know, super dumb and I don't know, childish, and that's stupid of me to do. But I think that there has to be more done because we just haven't done anything. We haven't really done much. I just have a hard time believing that the plan this offseason was get rid of Wallman, sign a couple of goalies that are probably going to be goalie depth, and get a third pair defenseman. I just have a really hard time believing that was the game plan for this summer. So that's why I think there's more to be done, as just because more to be done. There hasn't been anything that is done. So I think that's more where my head is at. But yes, you are right. Usually he has a big media availability when there is a break in the action. I'm trying to remember last year, though. Did he not have media availability before the DeBrincat trade, though? But
the DeBrincat trade is a trade, but not a free agency thing. He had at that point done everything he wanted to do in free agency for the most part. So, and I can't remember exactly, so I don't want to speak on it, but he did do a media availability after he made his free agent moves, and he did the bulk of those on day one. This season has not necessarily been the case if you're in the camp that he's not done yet.
Yeah, sure. I mean, maybe, but there's not any high profile guys really out there either, right? I mean, there might be more between the margin signings, but I don't know, man. My mind is pretty much completely shifted to trade possibilities. I free agency in my head has come and gone. I genuinely, and again, maybe that's faulty logic too, but there's the high profile big names that were out there all got swooped up immediately. We're sitting here with a ton of cap space and didn't really address a whole lot, at least on the higher end level of the roster. I'm pretty much looking at trade possibilities to fill that void at this point. I don't really know if I'm holding my breath for like a big free agent thing to happen down the road.
Right, and when we recorded yesterday, all the big name free agents were already gone, but there were a few quality, I guess you could say bargain bin guys left, and like Jeff Skinner, who got bought out. He's still decently productive. He was just on a ridiculously big contract.
Edmonton?
Adam Henrique, huh?
Edmonton for both of those, I think.
Both of those, Edmonton. And those guys both got signed before I believe our episode even went up at midnight. And then so I'm looking at what's left offensively, because that's where I think they still need to, like, they've signed a bunch of defensemen, albeit depth D, mostly Grand Rapids guys, but they haven't gotten anyone for their forward core. And I'm looking at who's the left available, and there's two that stand out to me. Vladimir Tarasenko and Daniel Sprong, who the Red Wings already had. So Tarasenko, I don't think is a bad option. He had 41 points in 57 games with Ottawa. Then he had 14 points in 19 games with Florida. Obviously, an uptick in production on a better team. But like that's not 41 points in 57 games. You put that across 82. That's a really good production level still. And that Ottawa team was not good last year. So I like that as an option. But I'd be, again, without all the term that's going around, I don't want Yzerman. I do think we need a second line winger, and I do think he could come in and be a second line winger on this team, at least. But he also plays pretty much primarily right wing, and then you're not bumping out Raymond, you're not bumping out Kane, so there's not really a spot for him, as much as I would like a Vladimir Tarasenko hypothetically. So you're right. You automatically shift your mind to who can play on the Detroit Red Wings via trade. Who are you looking at via trade? And unlike you, I actually do think the fact that he hasn't had media availability does mean something. To me, it does mean he's not done making moves. But those moves could be trade. But to your point, he did the media availability before Alex DeBrincat. But I don't think he's done. And I think that this is a clear sign that he's not done, because he's not satisfied with the work that he's done yet. And he doesn't want to talk to the media until he's satisfied, right? And he's not afraid of talking to the media. He talks to the media pretty plenty. But, I mean, I guess the question then comes, right? Like, why are you mentioned, too, like, this team, this roster is not done. Like, it's not fleshed out right as it stands now. But there's other reasons I feel that this team also needs to pursue trades. And that's mainly because of two reasons we brought up yesterday. They have too many left side D, and they have too many goalies. It's just that the 4 goalies signed, and I understand Jack Campbell's likely going to play in the AHL, but then you have 3 goalies signed. Like, one has got to go. You have like 5 or 6 left side D men, so one has got to go, barring one situation where maybe you keep them all. But I mean, it's just you look at the roster and it just does not feel like a complete roster as it stands right now. This roster is probably worse than last year. Simon Edvinsson is a definite upgrade. I think Carter Mazur comes in and is an upgrade in the bottom 6 immediately. I said yesterday, I'm not sure if Marco Kasper is ready for a top 6 role yet, and I know that Steve Yzerman doesn't want to call somebody like Marco Kasper's caliber up if he's not convinced he can eat the minutes that they want him to eat at the NHL level. So it just the question becomes like, then you're not done, because this roster's not done. It's just not fleshed out. It's not a question, it's a statement, but you get my point.
Yeah, man. Like that's the whole point I started with, was like, I just, and again, maybe this is just like wishful ignorance, but like, I just refuse to believe that this is it. Like that we're just, that this is where we're at. And this was the plan. And this was, where, like we have no issue being with, the organization has no issue with where they are right now, and everything's fine. And this is the roster they want to roll into opening night with. Again, maybe I'm coping, but like I genuinely just refuse to believe that this is just it, and this is part of the plan as we head into opening night.
Absolutely, and we'll talk about specifically the defense when we come back in segment 2, and I'll break down exactly like how weirdly out of balance it is. And why that kind of reassures me that a move has got to be coming, including that one weird situation that I don't think is a good idea at all, but I guess it is possible in segment 2, so stay tuned for that. Segment two. Good Lord, I'm getting ahead of myself. I got to talk to you guys today about GameTime. GameTime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the GameTime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guaranteed. GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, comedy, concerts, theater, and so much more. And save even more with an exclusive in-app deal on select seats ahead of the game or the event. And those zone deals mean that you save even more when you choose a section and you let GameTime choose that seat. And that lowest price guarantee means that GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference if you find the same seat somewhere else for less. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Actually, segment 2 now. Scotty, let's break down real briefly this defensive core because it's weird. Right now, as it stands, the Red Wings are going to have 9 players, 9 defensemen on their roster. Ben Sherratt, who plays left and can play right. Justin Holl, who plays right. Olli Maatta, who plays left. Jeff Petrie, who plays right. Eric Gustafsson. I keep wanting to call him Gustafsson. I don't know why. We've had a Gustafsson in the past. William Legason, Moritz Seider, Simon Edvinsson, and Albert Johansson. Those are all guys I could see plugged in to the NHL lineup. Now, there are a couple of guys I think, mainly Legason, who I think is going to be in the AHL, but I say that he played 40 games combined in the NHL last year. That's 2 more than Justin Holl. Like, can we really count him out at this point? So, but if you want to be, logical about it, sure, let's send him down to the AHL. You're down to 8 defensemen, and here's where it's like, that's not uncommon. A lot of teams, if they only carry 2 defensemen, would carry 8D. The Red Wings have done it in the past. I believe they did it 2 years ago, in fact, when they had Gustav Lindstrom, Jordan Osterley, and Robert Haig, and none of them could get that 6D spot locked down. So it would not be uncommon to carry 8D, but I just struggled to see with the balance and the makeup of this that it would make a whole heck of a lot of sense. Because, yes, Sherratt can play on the right side, but then who's playing on the first pair on the left side? Simon Edvinsson? One day, yes, I think that would be fantastic, but I don't know if he can handle Moritz Seider's workload in his rookie season. Like, I don't think that that's wise in his rookie season. Okay, who else? Eric Gustafsson? Okay, he typically plays left side, but his style, right, a little bit more offensive-oriented. Good defensively as well, which I like a lot about him. He's a good two-way skater, but a little bit more offensive-oriented, power play 2 type guy. He could probably play right side, and I believe he has at moments in his career. Legason, I got to figure out how exactly that's pronounced, but Legason, if he doesn't get sent down, he can play the right side. Albert Johansson can play the right side, but you only have 3 right shot defensemen on your roster, and that's Holl, Petrie, and Seider. And that, if that's your right side, is a downgrade from the right side that you had last year, because Justin Holl only played 38 games, and now you want him to play 80, 82. If he didn't fit last year, why would he suddenly fit this year? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and neither does sliding over these guys who are better on the left side, because that's their natural side, to a side that they're more uncomfortable with. I don't see how this roster stacked with left shot D is the direction. And I know that I believe Gustafsson is a defensive upgrade on the third pair, especially over Gostisbehere, but I just don't see how that makes the defense that much better. Like we said yesterday, it makes it marginally better. I just look at this defensive core and think they got to move out one of these left shot D because they still need a genuine second pair right side D. Like, it just the balance doesn't make sense.
Yeah, right now this blue line is a bleep show. Like it is genuinely like it is all over the place. And it was one of the things that we talked about going into the offseason, right? Is that we wanted upgrades on the blue line. Right now, I think there's a legitimate argument, and I think you mentioned it a little bit there earlier, was like, if you look at the blue line before the Wallman trade and then today, I think there's a really winning argument that your defensive group is worse right now than it was pre, Gostisbehere not re-signing and Wallman trade. So like, again, I sound like a broken record. I don't just want to like repeat myself for 30 minutes. I just cannot fathom that this is the plan.
Right.
I cannot wrap my head around, okay, we were a team that was a fringe playoff team that finished with the same amount of points as a playoff team. We're trying to get over the hump in our game plan, all while the front office is actively saying we need to get better defensively, is to get worse, like pretty objectively worse on the blue line from before free agency to after free agency. That I refuse to believe it. And if that ends up being the case, then I think that's awful.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty lateral move going to, like, if you want to compare him to Wallman or compare him to Gostisbehere, I think it's a pretty lateral move. I like I said, I do think that Gustafsson is better defensively than Gostisbehere, so he will make the third pair marginally better, but the third pair is not going to eat the bulk of the minutes defensively. Like, that's going to go to your first and second pair, and the second pair is not any better, but you have a plethora of left shot D now. That's why I just genuinely think I look at this defensive core and something's got to happen, which is why, again, it just reaffirms me that this Yzerman's not done, because it just doesn't make sense if it is done. And if this is it, I'll be very disappointed and will be very critical of it as well. I'm really critical of it as is, but like, I'm willing to believe that there's more to come, because the same conversation can be had about the goalie market, right? You have 4 goalies, and again, we're running on the assumption that Jack Campbell will be in Grand Rapids at the start of next season. But then you still have 3 goalies. You can't carry 3 goalies and 8 defensemen. Like, again, they said that they normally would carry 8 defensemen, but they had to carry 3 goalies, so that's why they didn't carry 8 defensemen. The year before, they carried 8 defensemen and 2 goalies. Like, you have to do one or the other. You can't do both. Somebody's got to go. And it might be Ville Husso. It could be Alex Lyon because his contract's even cheaper. I don't know. I'm not going to make an argument for one over the other, but one thing is for sure, at least one of your goalies has got to be moved out if your game plan is to bring in Cam Talbot for 2 years. Like, you just can't keep them all. So it's like, it's clear that there's more left to be done and more meat on this bone. It's just, you're looking at the market now, and so many of your trade targets are gone, right? Nikolai Ehlers is gone. Linus Ullmark is gone. Who's left? Marty Necas, Aaron Ekblad, Jacob Trouba. Like, those are all names that would improve this team, but your options are tremendously slimmed down, and there's not even a guarantee that any of those guys move, right? Like, I have optimism that there's more to come, but I look at what the market is for both free agency and trade, and I'm like, I don't know what trade he's going to swing and what assets he's going to have to give up.
Well, what assets would you give up, right? Like, you can always give up draft picks. Okay. I guess we can do that. But who on your NHL blue line has trade value outside of Edvinsson and Seider? Okay. So that's all locked in. Those are you're going to have to find a way to either buy them out, trade them, do a Wallman type trade, or just play them. So there you go. Your forward group is also a lot of guys that are either like, no, you're obviously not trading, or guys that don't have like value to bring in a legitimate, NHLer like that fills the role we want them to. And so then your third option would be, I mean, you think Ville Husso's oozing with trade value? You think Alex Lyon is trade value pouring out of him.
Lyon, I think, does have a fair amount of trade value, and that's simply because his contract is really good for the performance that he gave the Red Wings.
Yeah, but also that's the better. He's in his 30s,
and he's also the better of your two goalies. So, do you really want to? But I mean, Yzerman has said that he still feels that Ville Husso is a quality goaltender. So, who knows?
So, all of that. There's your NHL team and the amount of trade value you have there. So then you go, okay, well, then the option is, like I said, draft picks, or you start trading prospects for current talent. And I mean, I guess that's always on the table, right? You want to improve. That's something that every team has to do eventually. But I think Yzerman was pretty keen on not wanting to do that right now, and especially not doing it with the higher end guys. Obviously, Edvinson's not going anywhere. Marco Kasper's not going anywhere. Danielson's not going anywhere, right? Like, you have your high end guys like that you're not going to move. And then it's like, okay, well, what are you going to get for Berger? He's in his mid-20s and got demoted last year. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Outside of, again, trading, like, they have assets they could trade, but it's about the assets they want to trade. I don't know if they're oozing with a lot of guys that are ready to be thrown into trade pieces, unless they are willing to get rid of one of the bigger name young players, which I don't think they are.
Right. And my big fear is, like, a buyout is the only way to reduce some of these extra bloat rather than trading to get assets in. Because I look at the people who are rumored to be on the trade block, right? David Pagnotta brought up Aaron Ekblad and a possible fit in Detroit. And I would love Aaron Ekblad. He'd be a massive upgrade on the right side of this defensive core. Like, massive. Former number 1 overall pick. And he's really good. He had the toughest deployments with the Florida Panthers, and he was good in that role. He played with an incredible line as well. Stanley Cup champions. But he's a 1-year rental at $7.5 million. So you'd have to, one, that'd be a huge hit on your salary cap. Can you afford him with the contract extensions coming to Raymond and Seider? 2, is he worth the assets you're giving up if he only ends up being a 1-year rental? And it's just like, also, is he even available like we thought? Because that report came before free agency opened. And then Sam Reinhart signed a pretty team-friendly deal, right? On the open market, he was projected to get over $10 million. He signed for less than $9 million. So they still have $6 million in cap space to fill out their roster, and they only need a couple more players, and you can fill that with just, a couple RFAs, and it doesn't seem like he's really as available as we initially thought. Jacob Trouba, we thought was a slam dunk to be a Red Wing, but he's flexing his right in his no trade clause. I know some people have been weird about that, but like, he negotiated no trade clause. He has the absolute right to use that. And if he doesn't want to be traded to Detroit,
I don't even want to talk about that.
We don't got to broach that topic.
I had talked about that for about 2 weeks straight at last year's MLB trade deadline. I don't even want to retread that conversation. If it's worked into the contract for a reason, that is his right to do so. I don't know why people always freak out when players actually do it.
Right, and like, if you have a problem with that, take it up with the general manager that agreed to that contract.
Gave them the contract, yeah.
Right, and then Marty Natchez, they swung and missed on Gensel, so maybe they have a little bit more of a what's the word I'm looking for? Like, reason to re-sign Marty Natchez now. And we've seen in the past players who have requested trades or been unhappy still end up signing extensions. For instance, Shane Pinto, literally today, requested a trade yesterday after they couldn't come to a contract agreement and then extended a day later. Like, those guys are 3 main targets that I keep seeing pop up or have seen pop up, but there's no guarantee that they're going to be there. So this is coming off as entirely negative, and we got to get to a break. So I'll end this conversation on this. I have faith that Yzerman's not done because it doesn't make sense that he would be done, and all signs with this roster construction point that he cannot be done. But at the same time, I'm not overly optimistic about what options he has to improve this roster.
And if he is done, we cry.
And if he is done, well, you hope that the youth is as good as we've always been hoping for, and that they have incredible rookie seasons. Segment 3, Lockdown Red Wings coming up. We're going to change the tune a little bit. Talk about Datsyuk. Stay tuned. Segment 3, Lockdown Red Wings podcast. Development camp has begun, and we've haven't even mentioned it on this podcast because there's been a flurry of other things going on. Development camps going on at LCA where a lot of draft picks, prospects gather to work on their skills together and check in with the organization. The cool thing was Pavel Datsyuk was there. And Scotty and I were talking about this. I think what made it so cool is the realization that we have not heard or seen Pavel Datsyuk in any capacity with the Detroit Red Wings since he left in 2015, 16, but probably about the last time they made the playoffs. I can't exactly remember which year, but it was a while ago now. So seeing him back up there with the winged wheel behind him, wearing Red Wings gear, and just talking to the media, and talking to the media in general, because he didn't really talk to the media all too much when he was with the Red Wings, was really cool to see. There wasn't a lot of substance. I mean, right, Scotty, they asked him about wanting to join the organization.
I forget who the reporter was. That's my bad as someone who's telling this, but someone asked him about his future in coaching, or if there was a chance that he would be a coach with the Wings. The clip is out there on Twitter or X, and so you can go see it for yourself. But he basically said no. His focus was on the development, right, and on doing this camp and whatnot, and talking to these kids. But he still is very much like in a point in his life where he wants to be at home with his family as much as possible, which you got to respect. So I don't know. I think they kind of left the door open, and a lot of people want and are talking about him, being more involved with the organization, maybe long-term, maybe further down the road, but he's really not that old yet. And I think he's still at a point right now where, I mean, clearly he said right straight from him where he just wants to be at home as much as possible. So we'll see what kind of the future of that. I know we can make the old boys club even more. And try to get Datsyuk back and have a role with the organization, just like every former Red Wing great. But just in general, really cool to see him out there. A lot of the kids had quotes about like, "Oh my goodness, it's Pavel Datsyuk and whatnot."
I think that was Danielson, right?
Yeah. It was just really cool to see and see them all gather around and him give advice and whatnot on certain drills. I don't know. The whole thing was really cool. And like you said, I think the biggest thing was just the first time we've seen him give media availability since maybe he played. It's been a very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I also want to know his thoughts on his former franchise folding. He's a Coyote great, and I'm wondering if he has an opinion on that.
Are you proud of that one?
Was anything I said not true?
Just a low blow. It's just a low blow, man.
I'm just wondering. I'm wondering if he has an opinion on a franchise he's a legend for folding. That's a legitimate question.
No, dude, they just went in stasis. They'll be back. We just got to get a new owner and a new rink, and then the organization will come back.
Okay, cool.
It could be less than 5 years now because the owner, is out. That 5-year wait period was, right, because of him.
I'm so sure.
They'll be back, man.
I'm so sure.
We just need the Kachina jerseys to come back. But
dude,
we'll get a reverse retro with Utah or something. And they'll have the reverse retro.
I don't know, dude. They really were like, we're not a part of this thing. Like, don't do anything Coyotes related. You're not us.
For now, but give it enough time, and then it's like people who used to really despise Sergei Fedorov after he left, and now people are loving Sergei Fedorov again because time has passed, wounds heal. Except for one friend who's probably listening right now, and he'll know who I'm talking about.
So you think like 20 years?
Yeah. I mean, we get Hartford Whaler jerseys every year now.
He's back in 20 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, we got Hartford Whaler jerseys every single year now to the point where people are sick of it. So I think it'll happen.
Cool, man.
This is a great conversation.
It is.
It's a great way to end the episode. You have any final thoughts, dude?
I don't think so, man. We ball.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow. I hope something happens. So we got a long July ahead of us if this is it. So, let's hope for the best because I want this Red Wings team to be better. I think we all do. So, yeah.
Same, man.
Same time, same place. It's your team. Every day.
Every day.